Nancy, we were just saying offline that we are total groupies of yours, and I will say it out to the world now. So we are absolutely excited to have you on this show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my God, you guys, thank you so much for having me. You're just too nice. You're absolutely too nice, and you're making my morning. So thank you very much.
Well, Carly's too nice. I'm not usually accused of that.
You're the mean one. Nancy, it's funny because I used to work for an inbound agency, and that's actually where Joe and I met. And one of the higher ups at the agency had a psychology degree. And when she was getting the degree, people were like, what do you want to do with that? And she said, marketing. And they were like, that is so strange. Like, you're in psychology. Why aren't you getting a marketing and advertising communication degree? And she was like, I just think this is the right way to go. Like, if you want a marketing degree, you have to understand the psychology of your audience, psychology of who you're targeting. And I was like, that is so smart. And then a few years later, you come around, and I mean, you were around before, but it's like, oh, she knows what she's talking about. And so, oh, sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, we're talking psychology, but am I not mistaken? Your background is neuroscience?
So honestly, my background is journalism. But after I graduated and got my degree in that, and I knew I was never going to be good in it, I scrambled. Going into my senior year, I scrambled and I took all kinds of other writing classes because I knew I'd be a good journalist. I wouldn't be a great journalist. But it was a little bit later in my career, Joe, when I came upon neuroscience and behavioral science and social science. I read a book by Dr. Robert Cialdini called Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, which I highly recommend. And that sent me down the rabbit hole because I was reading about, basically, as Carly was saying, psychology, how people make decisions. And if you're in marketing, it's all about getting people to make decisions. And so wouldn't it make sense for us as marketers to understand how people make decisions? And so I kind of went down that rabbit hole, Cialdini and Ariely and Roger Dooley, and just started to, soak up as much information as I possibly could, started to experiment with it, in marketing, in the realm of marketing, starting to basically apply what I learned in behavioral science to the marketing communications, saw that what I was applying worked. And then it was, the point of no return. That's what I just kind of doubled down on that. So it's very kind of you to refer to me as a neuroscientist, but I'm really more of a marketer who applies behavioral science and neuroscience.
Okay. So yeah, but that's what I'm saying is you're drawing off of more than just kind of general psychology, if I understand it.
Yes. It's
a broader base. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on that.
Yeah,
cool.
Thank you for clarifying. I guess the point I was trying to get at is it's not just all about CTR, open rates. It's getting into the minds of the people that you're targeting. And Nancy, you have written a wonderful book called Using Behavioral Science in Marketing, which is very fitting for this conversation. And I want to get into some of the principles of that in a second. But before we do, we have solopreneurs across the board. Some are B2B, some are B2C. There are different approaches to those two areas, correct? You don't necessarily approach B2B and B2C in a similar way, right?
Yeah. So it's a twofold answer. In marketing, there are definitely differences between B2B and B2C. The B2B sales cycle is longer. There are more decision makers and influencers. The price tag is usually higher. B2C, it's often a shorter, purchase cycle. It's maybe one person deciding. There are more impulse purchases. So absolutely, there are differences. But the thing that brings them together is, at the end of the day, it's a person that we're marketing to, whether it's a B2B sale or a B2C sale. And so there are certain things about people that are the same regardless, whether they're, at home or at work. And so understanding how people respond to information, what catches their attention, how they make decisions, I think that's where the two start to come together. So you want to take the best practices in B2B marketing and maybe overlay some behavioral science. You want to take the best practices in B2C marketing and then overlay some behavioral science. And that's going to give you your strongest, effort in the marketplace.
Okay, that makes sense. I just wanted to put that statement out before we dive in. And I'm actually halfway through your book right now. I love it. I mean, Joe and I have heard you talk in the past, but for people that aren't as familiar, what are some of the tactics and principles people can use to capture their audience attention that you reference in the book?
Sure. So the book is all about behavioral science. And, for anyone who might not be familiar with the term or isn't quite sure because they've heard a few different definitions, what we're really talking about very simply is just how people behave, and more specifically, how they make decisions, right? So how they decide to, look at something, to consume content, to trust the source of the information, and then to make a purchase. So behavioral science is all about, all about discovering how people make decisions and, why they do what they do. And then from the marketing perspective, we add in and how to get them to do more of what we want them to do, right? So, Carly, as you say, one of the things we want them to do is pay attention, because we could have the absolute best product, the best message, but if nobody consumes it, if nobody reads it, if no one sees it, if no one stops and engages with it, we're kind of out of luck. So there are many ways. I'd like to talk about three of them. There are three ways that I would bring up that would help people attract someone's attention. So one is the idea of surprise. What happens when people are surprised, according to the University of Glasgow, is their emotions are intensified by about 400%. So why should we care about that? Well, when our emotions are intensified by 400%, two things happen. We focus more on the thing that surprised us, and we're more likely to remember it. So if you think about it, if you can get a message out there that surprises people, all of a sudden they're going to focus on it, right? You send out your email or your direct mail piece, or you put your blog post out or your social media post. And if there's something about it that surprises people, it's going to stop them. And they're going to focus on it. All right. Job number one, we've gotten them to pay attention. And then job number two, they're going to remember it. They're more likely to remember it. So anything that we can do to surprise people, it could be a visual, an image that's unusual. Instead of using the same thing everyone else is using, we put a different image out there. I know Walmart did an Instagram post once, and it was a human torso, but it had this furry animal head. And you see the furry animal head and you expect to see a furry animal body, but you don't. You see a human torso, or you see the human torso and you expect a human head, but you don't. Or we can use language. Say you're writing a email subject line, you can, I got one from Sears the other day, and it said something like, it's been a lawn winter, LAWN. And that surprised me. I'm like, oh, they made a mistake. And then I'm like, oh, wait, it's from the patio department. They're selling lawn furniture, but it's just enough, when you're looking at something, you want that little thing to surprise you, because that's what's going to stop you. And then you're going to pay more attention and you're going to remember the message. So surprise is a good way to get people to pay attention. There are also certain what I call eye magnet words. There's been a lot of research that shows that people don't read the way we write. When we write one word followed by the next, followed by the next. But that's not how people read. When people read, they skim and they scan. And if something catches their attention, they go in and they read the rest of the information. And there are certain words that actually are proven to attract people's attention. And again, I call them eye magnet words because they'll leap off the screen or off the page and they'll attract your eye like a magnet. Some of them have to do with the idea of novelty, right? New, now, introducing, announcing, finally, soon, discover. Those are all great words because the human brain craves news and novelty, because when we find something that we think is new, it releases dopamine, which is a feel-good chemical, among other things. And so we're constantly jonesing for that next hit of dopamine. We're constantly looking for that next new thing, because when we think we found it, we get that rush of dopamine and it feels good. So, new or any of the family of new words, great eye magnet word, that will attract attention. The word free will attract attention. Dan Ariely, who's a well-known behavioral economist, finds that we so overvalue the word free. We get such a rush when we see something that's free that we have to have it. So if something were even a couple of cents, we might not want it. But if it's free, we have to have it. You think about going to maybe a trade show and you're walking up and down the exhibitor floor and, you're grabbing the pens and the mugs and the T-shirts as if you don't own a single pen or mug or T-shirt, then it's time to pack to go home. And you're like, oh my God, I can't fit this all in my suitcase. What was I thinking? But at the time it was like, oh my God, it's free. I have to have it. So, the new family of words, the word free, the word you is a great way to attract attention. People are more interested in themselves than in anybody else. So instead of, an entrepreneur or a solopreneur talking about, well, we do this, or my company does this, or, Acme Widgets does this, say, you might be interested. You could benefit from, you could find this valuable. As we're skimming and scanning, we'll go to that word you, but we'll gloss over, I should say, I, we, our, my company, or the company name. So eye magnet words are great ways to attract attention. And then the third way is something that behavioral scientists call social proof. When people aren't certain of what to do, they look around, they follow the lead of others. So if you get a message out there that lets people know that a lot of people, just like the person who's currently reading your message, are doing something, well, the person who's currently reading the message, right away they're going to pay attention and think, ooh, what am I missing? Maybe I should be doing that too. maybe that's a good thing for me to do. So there are many other ways that behavioral science offers to attract attention, but I think those are three of the best ones and three relatively easy ones for a solopreneur to apply, whether they're doing marketing communications or whether they're even having a face-to-face sales conversation.
Hey, what about like even things like your website, like your hero on your website? I don't see a lot of them saying you. Usually it's, maybe if it's good, it's usually like, who we help and how we do it kind of thing gets conveyed in the hero. But I've never seen that. Does that make sense, or is that misapplying the theory?
So, it can go either way. Like, I'm not saying we can never use the word we. I'm not saying we can never use, the company name. I mean, obviously we want to. And sometimes, the headline on a website, when you're quickly, scrolling, you just might want to, it's like, well, who are these people? We do this, and it's like, if you can quickly and clearly and succinctly describe what it is you do, that's great. But then as you begin to build on that, it should really be through the lens of the person, what they're looking for and how it's going to benefit them. And if you find a way to very quickly and clearly and succinctly communicate your value proposition without using the word we, by using the word you, so much better. Maybe you jump on someone's website and it says, you're looking for a way to stand out. We can help you do that because we, whatever we do. But I would just say, every time you use the word we, there should be one we for every 6 or 7 yous.
I think we got an A/B test in the making here, Carly. We're gonna A/B test our new homepage.
We always have an A/B test in the making, Joe. Well, so now, you have so many little nuggets of wisdom in your book. Like, that was just giving the surface, and it's such a great, I feel like, preview into what people can see if they buy your book. But my question, I guess, is, let's say somebody is writing email, and in their subject line, they're like, you should buy this free ebook. That I'm just riffing here, but well,
that would get my attention because I'm surprised that I have to buy something that's free.
Yeah, surprise! You should buy this; it's free.
I wasn't going to go there, Joe, but okay. But you should get this free ebook, right? For example,
yes,
that's
you should get this free ebook, and then we'll do a surprise emoji to just throw that in there. Let's say they're trying the different tactics, nothing is working. When people are trying to apply behavioral science to their marketing, take a page out of your book. When things go wrong, what are they typically doing wrong? If it's not working for them, where do you see people failing and how can they correct it?
Sure. So, one place I see people failing is they try the one thing. Free works and emojis work. Great. You should get this free ebook, and then not as many people respond. And you're like, okay, behavioral science doesn't work. Nancy doesn't know what she was talking about, or it doesn't work for me, or it doesn't work for my, my product or my target. And the truth of the matter is none of these behavioral science tactics are foolproof. We have yet to get to the point as marketers where we can wave a magic wand and make everyone do what we want them to do. It would be wonderful if we could do that, right? But we're never going to get there, and nor should we want to. We don't want to make everyone do what we want them to do. We want to help people find us who can really benefit from our products and services, right? So anything that we're doing is going to increase the likelihood that people will respond, increase the likelihood that people will pay attention and respond. So if the first thing that we test doesn't work, let's test something else, right? So one of the mistakes I see is people try one thing, it doesn't work as well as they hope. They're like, okay, this isn't for me. And, my advice to them is go back in, like, all right, you're offering this free ebook and you said you should get this free ebook with a smiley emoji and it didn't work. Well, let's think about maybe why it didn't work, or let's actually step back and think about why would somebody want to get the ebook? What problem is it solving? What's it going to help them do? What's the reason? That they should get it. What are they going to gain from it? And test a few different subject lines. Maybe there's one about social proof. Everybody in coaching is getting this ebook. Get yours now too. It's like, oh, all right, you got some social proof. Or, the number one ebook for coaches, download it for free. It's like, oh, there's some authority principle there. It's the number one book. Or maybe it's providing the reason why. We know that people are more likely to do what we ask them to do if we give them a reason why. So maybe we want to say, free ebook because everyone needs more clients, right? So we want to think about, all right, what is it we want people to do? Why might they not do it? And then let's think about potential ways to overcome that. And let's identify 2 or 3 or 4. And then we want to test them and see which one works best. And then the second thing that I think people sometimes do wrong when it comes to applying behavioral science to marketing is they misapply the tactics. So we talked a little bit earlier about social proof, right? When we're uncertain about what to do, we look around, we see what other people are doing, and we follow their lead. And this is particularly true if it's people like us, right? We feel like, well, if they're all doing it, it's probably a safe choice. It's probably, a move that I can make, and I'm not going to get disappointed. In fact, if I don't follow them, I might actually feel that I'm missing out on something. So social proof, it's a very strong motivator, but it can be misapplied. For example, say you're selling life insurance. And so you say to someone, too many people wait until they're 50 years old to buy life insurance. I'm talking to you now while you're younger because it's a good idea for you to get it. Well, all the person hears is a lot of people wait until they're 50. They're like, great, I'm going to wait until I'm 50. That's social proof, right? But it's completely undoing what the person who's selling the insurance is trying to do. The person selling the insurance is trying to get you to buy it earlier. But by saying lots of people wait until they're 50, the message is, the message to the person hearing it is, I'll wait until I'm 50. It's almost like a social proof backfire. So, one thing is, one mistake is they test one thing and they're like, okay, it doesn't work. So they need to really test more. And the other mistake is, they take the principle and they misapply it. They think they're doing the right thing, but there's like this law of unintended consequences. It's like, you gave a reason that actually reinforced the decision to not act as opposed to encourage people to act. So those are, I think, two of the big mistakes that I see as people start to look to apply behavioral science to their marketing and sales messages.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I think another thing people need to understand is that people's behavior can change and you need to constantly be testing. Your audience may be evolving, your product may be evolving. And it's something that's always so funny to me is we've heard like I had stopped using emojis in subject lines. And then I found out 6 months later, no, those are working really well. And all these things, we just kind of go back and forth, ebbs and flows. So I'm curious, in your ongoing research, what has been the most surprising thing you've discovered that may be counterintuitive to what you originally thought?
Sure. And you actually make a very good point, too, about things kind of, ebbing and flowing. Something's, working really well and then it maybe not so much. And so it's important to test and to stay on top of things and to think about what works for a particular market segment or a particular, product. So, you could have one thing that works really well for one group of people and another thing that works really well for this other group of people. You could be selling the same product to both groups, but, one group is more, interested in promotions, like saving money, gaining things, and someone else might be more interested in avoiding loss and, not running into problems. So you got to find what's going to work for the individual market. And then when it comes to what surprised me, so there were definitely some counterintuitive tactics in behavioral science. One of them is the idea of loss aversion, right? People are more motivated to avoid the pain of loss than they are to achieve the pleasure of gain. But in marketing, we're all about the gains, the benefits, the advantages. And so it's, it can be a little counterintuitive to instead focus on what you might lose as opposed to what you might gain. But I think the thing that surprised me the most when I was doing the research for the book is there's a principle called autonomy. And it's this idea that humans have this very deep-seated desire to exercise some control over themselves and their environments. And there was a researcher, Ellen Langer, I think it was, along with a partner, a research partner, and they went into an assisted living facility, right? And they ran this experiment. So some people were given a choice of which movie they wanted to watch and what plant they wanted to grow in their room. And other people were simply shown a movie and there was a plant put in the room and somebody would come in and care for the plant, as needed. And, very small difference, right? Like getting people to choose the movie they want and getting people to, choose their plant and take care of it versus having someone, provide a movie for them and having someone provide the plant. Well, it turned out that when researchers came back, I think it was like a year later, there were twice as many deaths in the group where people didn't have choice. And they started to, delve into that data and they're like, wow, all things being equal, when you start to control for somebody's age and somebody's, health, it really seemed that a big player in some people passing away sooner was they just didn't have any autonomy. They just didn't have any, sense of purpose, sense of self, sense of control. So I was like, that is really amazing because, I was writing and researching with an eye to marketing and sales and, persuading people within a commercial context. But it was like, wow, twice as many people had died when the researchers came back in the group that didn't have the autonomy. So it's really interesting. And I don't want to, I don't want to dwell on that. So I'm going to pull us up out of autonomy and say from a marketing perspective, what it means is we want to remind people, our customers, our prospects, that they have a choice, that they're the ones in control, that we're not forcing them into doing something. And in fact, if we can give them a couple of choices, I mean, say I'm a consultant and somebody asks me for a proposal, I'm better off giving people 2 versions of the proposal or 3 even versions of the proposal than just one. Because you put one thing down in front of someone and the question is, all right, do I or do I not want it? You put 2 or 3 and it's like, oh, which of these do I want? And it's almost a foregone conclusion. They're going to choose one of them and they're going to feel good because they're the ones in charge. They're the ones who are making the choice. And then an add-on to this is, it's also very counterintuitive, but there's something called the BYAF technique. BYAF stands for, but you are free. And what behavioral scientists have found is you can tell someone what you want them to do. You can ask them to do it. But then if you follow the request with a phrase like, but you're free to choose, or the choice is yours, or it's up to you, or it's your call, on average, you double the likelihood that people do what you're asking them to do. And it's because you're bringing to the forefront of their mind that they're the ones in charge. They're consciously making the decision. They're not being forced into something. So I found that fascinating. And it was actually pretty surprising. You would say, like, why would you sell your heart out? And just when you're asking someone to do something, remind them, but you don't really have to. Like, that sounds so counterintuitive. And yet it can actually be the thing that does get people to do what you're asking them to do. Pretty interesting stuff.
It is so funny. Literally this morning, I was talking to my daughter about like the clothes she wanted to wear today. And I was really pushing for this. It's hot here. So and she wanted to wear a sweater and I was pushing for her to wear shorts and a t-shirt. And I was like, you know what? You do you. I was like, you do you. You pick it. And then she went and picked what I wanted her to wear because I was like, you do you, honey. And so it just happened an hour ago.
I love it. I love it.
But it's so wild the way the brain works. And gosh, just fascinating. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that just happened.
Yeah, no, it's funny. And it is fascinating because I think, if you said to your daughter, well, why did you decide to put on the shorts and t-shirt? Was it because I said, you do you? She might, she would more than likely say, no, I decided that, it was kind of hot, or I wanted to wear that, she wouldn't say, well, it was because you elevated the autonomy principle and you made me feel like but it's true.
I would hope not, given that.
If she did say that, we would have breaking news.
Yeah, that's her, really. She wouldn't be, she'd be on the show and not me. Exactly. Yeah. But my point is, a lot of times, we're making these decisions subconsciously. And if you then turn around and you ask somebody, well, why did you buy that? Or why didn't you buy that? Or why did you like this? Or why don't you like this? They'll give you the reason they think is true. They'll point to a very sensible explanation. But what very often we're not aware of is there are other factors at play that can influence our decisions, like the idea of having a choice, like the idea of social proof, like the idea of the authority principle. We'll think we're buying for really good rational reasons, and that certainly is part of it, but there's this other factor at play that can influence those decisions, and very often that factor is something that we're not consciously aware of. But for marketers to get out ahead of that, for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, anyone who's trying to make a sale, for us to be aware of how people make decisions, and I emphasize make because very often we don't consciously make them, we default to them. When we're in a position to have that knowledge and to use it in our favor, it's a win-win. It helps us help our customers and prospects. It helps us make sure our messages land and helps people make a decision sooner that will ultimately benefit them. Because when you think about it, you've got a product, your competitors have a product, there's a market out there, your competitor's going to get some of those people, you're going to get some of those people. Wouldn't you rather get more of them? How are you going to get more of them? By understanding, how the brain works, how people make decisions, the decision-making shortcuts that they rely on. And when you're armed with that information, it just makes you more effective at doing what you're doing.
Nancy, I feel like you'd be a hard person to argue with, but if I were to get in an argument with you, I would just wave the white flag immediately because I'm like, she's going to use some tactic that's just going to bring me down. I just feel like your job is so fascinating. And I'm thinking about our audience, and you've just listed a few of your many principles that you mentioned in your book. And I feel like they're like, gosh, I want to dive into all of this. But I have such limited time. I have to focus on my operations. I have to focus on just running that one-person business. I don't know if it's fair for you to choose one principle that you would focus on if you could pick one? Because maybe they're like your babies, but if you had to pick one that you think a solopreneur should really dive into if they have limited time, could you?
It is a tough question. And a lot of times we choose a behavioral science principle based on, the problem that we're trying to solve or the challenge that we have. But if you're going to force me to, I would say it would be the idea of cognitive fluency. And cognitive fluency is a mouthful of a phrase, but what it really means is people prefer things that are easier to think about and easier to understand. Not only do they prefer them, but they find them more truthful and more accurate. And as a result, they are more likely to believe them, more likely to be persuaded by them, more likely to feel comfortable making a decision about them. So what does this boil up to? What it means is regardless of the product or service we're selling, we have to be very clear about our message. We don't want to use vernacular. We don't want to use jargon. We don't want to use acronyms. We don't want to obfuscate, if you will, our message, right? So often it's like, we have the solution that will help you optimize your customer behavior. But what do you do? What does that mean? What is the solution? And what do you mean by optimize customer behavior? Like, what you have a product that will help me get more people to open my email. Oh, okay. Now I understand that, right? So the idea of being clear, of using concrete terms, of not falling into this kind of, vague language that so often we use, I think that's arguably one of the most important things that any entrepreneur, solopreneur, big company marketer, any of us can do. We just want to be clear about what we're offering. We want to use concrete terms. We want to use, terms that allow people to create a mental image so we can see it. It's like, oh, okay, I can see somebody opening my email. I can't see somebody acting with optimized behavior. I don't know what that means, So clear, crisp communication. The language that we use needs to, succinctly and easily communicate so that people aren't left scratching their head because we think, oh, well, in page 3, we tell them even more on our website. They're not going to get to page 3 on our website. We need to be really crystal clear. So I think cognitive fluency, and I smile when I say that because the behavioral scientists could have come up with a better phrase than cognitive fluency because that leaves you scratching your head. Well, what does that mean? They should call it like the easy to understand principle. But that's basically what it is. Like, make sure that your sales message, your marketing message, the message on your website, in your email, your social ads, whatever, make sure it's clear. Make sure people know what you're talking about.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because it can be so easy to fall into jargon. I know at the beginning of this interview, I said CTR, and it's like for our audience, our audience of solopreneurs, they're not marketers. They may not know that CTR is click-through rate. Like, it rolls off the tongue so easily. And so I'm so glad you pointed that out. And it's often helpful to have somebody that's not in your line of work to review it before it goes live to make sure you're speaking to your actual audience and not to somebody that speaks your lingo.
You're absolutely right. They call it, the behavioral scientists call it like the curse of knowledge. Like, we know what we know, and so we assume that other people know it. I mean, why wouldn't you know what CTR is? Come on, of course. Like we use it so often, we don't even think that it's not as common as the word apple or coffee mug. We just use it all the time. But you're right. When someone from outside the industry looks at it, they might be like, I don't know what you're talking about. So yeah, avoiding that jargon and and having, just taking a step back or having someone come in and take a look at what you're putting out there can really service you, really kind of benefit your business. Because if people don't really know what you offer, are they going to use you? Probably not, right? Are they going to take the time to find out? Probably not. There are a lot of competitors out there. People are just going to move on to the next place until they find something that immediately satisfies what they're looking for.
Yeah. No, I mean, even I'm the fractional CMO with Lifestar is what my title. And a friend of mine is a dermatologist, and she was like, what's your job title? And I was like, I'm a fractional CMO. She was like, that doesn't make any sense for your line of work. And she thought I meant chief medical officer because she's a doctor. And I didn't even know that was a phrase in the medical world. And so just really making sure your audience knows what you mean. I can't stress that enough. I'm so happy you brought that up because I think that is such a big deal. Well, so I love my job. And I'm not just saying that because Joe's here, but I'm also very jealous that you get to dive into this kind of stuff day in and day out. And I'm curious for people that can't necessarily dedicate all of their time to behavioral science, but want to implement it into their business. Aside from testing, aside from reading your book, which I know I've said that a million times in this, I just am such a fan that I think everybody should read it. What other recommendations would you have for aspiring solopreneurs wanting to implement this, the resources, just how do they make it a part of their marketing plan?
Sure. So, I myself have a small agency. So I'm not quite a solopreneur, but there's very few of us. So I kind of go through some of that same, there's so much I need to know and so little time to learn it. And so one of the things I like are podcasts because I can multitask. I can go out for a run and I can, listen to a podcast. So I'm kind of, killing two birds with one stone. So two podcasts that I really recommend are Melina Palmer. She runs a podcast called The Brainy Business, and Roger Dooley, who runs Brainfluence. And I love to listen to them. There are others, I'm just mentioning two right now. There are others that are out there that are really good, but I really like both of them because they allow me to stay current and they have a marketing and sales bent to their podcast. And they just talk about not only what's new, but how to apply it in a very practical, easy to understand way. So I would recommend those two podcasts. They're great ways to stay on top of things when people are, time pressed. And then there are a couple of e-newsletters that I like as well. And I know finding time to read can be difficult, but they're pretty short. They're well written and you can kind of dive in and out and grab what you need. One of them is called Habit Weekly and the other one is called Inside BE for behavioral economics, but it's Inside BE and Habit Weekly. So I would definitely recommend those. It's, for a relatively small investment of time, you can really plug into, what's going on in the world of behavioral science and social science and how to use that in your business.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, those will all be in the show notes. You have plugged other people. Now it's time to plug yourself. We will include, let's talk about your book, where they can find it, but also where can they learn more about you?
Sure. So the book is Using Behavioral Science and Marketing, Drive Customer Action and Loyalty by Prompting Instinctive Responses. And that's kind of the gist of it right there. It's like you want to just prompt these hardwired, automatic, instinctive responses because that's what's going to get people to engage with you and do business with you. And it's available at Kogan Page, which is the publisher, on their website. It's available on Amazon. It's really available, any place that you can buy a good book. The independent bookstores, Target, Barnes and Noble. So definitely check it out. I would love to hear from any of your audience that picks up a copy. And if anyone has any questions or wants to follow up with me, I'd be happy to entertain that. And then I am the co-founder of HBT Marketing. HBT stands for Human Behavior Triggers. And what we do is we create marketing campaigns, email campaigns, direct mail campaigns, landing pages, social ads that blend behavioral science and marketing best practices in order to increase the likelihood that people do what our clients want them to do. And so if you go to hbtmktg.com, HBT Marketing, but we've abbreviated marketing, that's our website. And there's a lot of links to articles and podcast interviews and webinars on the site. So if anyone wants to find out more about me, about our company, or more broadly speaking, about how to apply behavioral science and marketing, check that out because there's a lot of good resources there.
Perfect. And again, all of those will be in the show notes. Well, Nancy, we ask all of our guests this question. So I want to end the show with this. What is your favorite quote about success?
Wow. Okay, so I'm so not a sports person, and if I were a sports person, I wouldn't even be a hockey person. But there's that. I think it's a Wayne Gretzky quote. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and I feel like that's a pretty good a pretty good quote to think about when you're thinking about success. You're not always going to succeed, but if you're afraid to try, you're never going to succeed, right? So I like that one.
Good job, Wayne. One of my favorites. Well, Nancy, we are so giddy about this, and I know our audience is going to benefit so much from this episode, and we just so appreciate your time for coming on the show today.
Thank you guys so much. Carly and Joe, it's been my absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed speaking with you, so thank you again.
You too.
Wonderful. And listeners, we love, love, love doing this for all of you. And so in return, we would love a 5-star review, a subscribe, like, you know what to do. Please do it. Otherwise, we will see you next time on The Aspiring Solopreneur.